That alone, verse number 87. Taking each kind alone, it exists. Mutually, each excludes the other. When this is remembered, body and all such are neither real nor unreal. That is indescribable. Commentary. Looking and seeing are two complementary aspects in the act of perception. The act of looking comes from the subjective side, while the possibility of seeing comes from the objective side. In other words, looking is what you do from your side, and seeing is what takes in the other side. What is there you see? To see it, you look. What you look for and see can be a thing outside your body or something inside it. When you turn inward and look at your mind, the thoughts that pass and the emotions that come along are objects of inward mental perception. They are to be added to whatever you look for and see outside. You may ask, what is nature? Or what is this world? World is just another name for the comprehensive experience of nature. Sometimes we refer to the earth as the world, but in a more general sense, the world is whatever we experience. Whatever is experienced is part of this one entity we call the world. Even the I consciousness, the feeling of I, can be subjected to one's own inner perception. We know the I consciousness directs thoughts and experiences many things, yet even it can become objectivized. The object matter can also include the subject as an object. Thus, object is a very broad term. So then, nature is what we experience, and the world is what we experience. Is this experience objective in the usual sense of the term? When we consider an object outside, we think of a concrete substance. The outside object is understood by us only in terms of the idea of concreteness. By itself, the object doesn't get into our knowledge. What we have is an idea of its objectivity. In that sense, we can say that nature is the idea of objectivity in our awareness. In another sense, we can say that objectivization of our ideas is the world. A consciousness directed towards something becomes objectivized. What is perceived is the idea of an object. In either case, what we experience is a modulation. Modulations all have names. Narayana Guru has been preparing our minds in the last 4 or 5 verses to arrive at the idea given in this particular verse. He says that to say a modulation or a modification is real because you know it is wrong. We explain this through the example of the beingness of a pot. We found that the knowing of the pot is there, but the beingness of it is not, because there is only the beingness of the clay. This is why we say the pot is unreal. It is only a modulation in our ideas. The true being is in the clay. We need to bear this in mind now. In verse 85, the Guru likened everything we see here to the masterly production of an artist, describing it as a snake painted by a master. In other words, it has a marvelous form but no substance. The form is what gets a name. Even if you fashion the form of a flower in paper or plastic, the mind accepts it as a flower. It has no qualities of a flower. and yet we use the fake one in place of a true flower for decoration. We even call it a flower, since the name is so easily associated with the form. But it lacks any substance that would make it a flower. To what category do a plastic flower and a plastic orange belong? You don't think of them as belonging to the same species, even though they are both plastic. One belongs to a flower species and the other to the citrus species. Isn't it total nonsense? They are plastic lumps. How can one be a fruit and the other a flower? Since you have an idea of the kind in your mind, different categories are put under one class. You are once again seduced by the form over the substance. Look at all your experiences, whether they are subjective or objective. They are all nameable. How do we decide to name a thing? By looking at its properties. If two things have the same major property, we tend to forget the little differences, the accidents. One person having a tall body and another a short, fat body are accidents. There can be permanent accidents as well as temporary ones. The shape of a man's nose is a permanent accident, but his wearing a red or yellow cloth is a temporary one. If there are 10 people sitting together, and if one is wearing a pink shirt, you might identify him as the one in the pink shirt. It's only a temporary accident, but at that moment he stands out as one kind because of this very superficial thing. If we go a step farther and say, all those people who are about 20, we are still referring to an accident, but we are including people irrespective of what they are wearing. When we say human beings, it is not their age, dress, color, or anything else that is particularly important. There is one property without which people cannot be human beings, and with which they are human beings. This is called the differentia. Differentia is related to the word difference. Of the many possible differences, the difference that is most essential is the differentia. A kind is decided by the differentia it has. Homo sapiens, the thinking animal, is human. Among animals, the one that thinks is a man. So we classify all human beings with this one differentia. This kind of definition is called genus et differentia. The genus is animal, the differentia is the capacity for thought. Our understanding of nature is mainly based on this one principle of differentia. Physicists, chemists, biologists, botanists, all scientists use classifications and categorizations. If you look at a botanical textbook or walk in a public garden, you will see a label on each tree and flower bearing the family name in Latin, which is the universally accepted nomenclature. One family is separated from another in this way. Even sentences are divided into several classifications, such as nouns, verbs, prepositions, conjunctions, adverbs, and adjectives. In the objective world and the subjective world, our minds work by pigeonholing, by classifying everything into kinds. Narayana Guru says one kind is not in another. The verb is not in the noun, and the noun is not in the adverb. Teakwood is not in ebony, ebony is not in fir, fir is not in redwood. The pig is not in the lion, and the lion is not in the monkey. Even in music, there are various scales which differentiate groups of related sounds, and so on. All the experiences we have are understood in terms of kinds. One of the major ways to differentiate one kind from another is by form. There are many kinds of form, for instance, physical, substantial, literal, and etymological. Every form is a modification. You can draw a bird as small as a grain of millet or as large as an elephant, but it will always be recognized as a bird. You can draw an elephant as small as an ant, but it will still be recognized as an elephant. Form has this kind of magical power because our minds are conditioned to it. I should confess that when I first came to the West, I couldn't distinguish between people. Everyone looked alike. Now I wonder how that could have been. They are all so different. I can easily recognize the differences. The mind is very quick to learn to recognize individual forms. But just at first, all white people looked alike, all black people looked alike, all Chinese people looked alike. Porphyry made a system of classification, which is now called Porphyry's tree. The categories get smaller as you go up, giving the scheme a tapering shape like a tree. At the base are the vast numbers of temporary accidents, and above that are the lesser numbers of permanent accidents or properties. Above them are differentia, groups, and then kind or species. At the top, just below the singular one or absolute beingness, there is genus. All these, from the accidents to the genus, are different modulations. This is the way our minds work. First we think in terms of the genus, then the species, the subclasses, coordinate species, then the smaller classes, and finally separate individuals. Narayana Guru says, Tanu mudalayadu satum Allah. The word Tanu has a very special connotation in both Sanskrit and Malayalam. It means just a sketch. If you take a pencil and make the barest sketch, without embellishment or shading, it is enough for our minds to distinguish what it represents. An exceedingly beautiful woman is called Tanvi. It is as if she has no body. She is just a feminine formation. Your mind just sees the femininity. Her physical substance is just enough to create the apparition of a woman's form. The barest minimum requirement to recognize a body is called Tanu. The rest is just padding. So the Guru says, Tanu mudalayadu sattumilla, meaning that the central aspect of a perception, mental or physical, which brings you to pinpoint a thing as belonging to a class, is not real. Is it unreal then? No, because it has functional validity. For all the transactions you make, you depend on this operational validity. Because it has an operational validity, you cannot say it is unreal. Since it is neither real or unreal, the Guru calls it avachyamayadinu, indescribable or unpredictable. I have been trying to understand what Husserl called pure or transcendental phenomenology. It bears some resemblance to what we are talking about. Husserl was trying to present a totally new science focused on the very core of human understanding, which is more the domain of philosophy. I don't know if Husserl finally arrived at the same vision the seers had, but as far as I have read, he is moving in the right direction to reach the truth. In presenting his transcendental phenomenology, Husserl was overconscious of the possibility that someone might misunderstand him. He complained that for 10 years, whatever he had said about it was misinterpreted and misrepresented by many people, that he made more enemies than friends, and that hardly anyone understood him. He wanted to restate his case, so he began, "I am presenting here a totally new science. When you first hear this, you don't think that this is possible." So what is this new science Husserl is speaking of? There are already disciplines addressing everything we experience here. Physicists say they are making a science of the perceivable aspects of the objective world, and psychologists say they are building a science of actual experiences. Both the physicist and the psychologist deal with the facts of experience. Husserl says he is not making a science of facts. The science of facts relates to what I earlier called the seeing side of things, but he wants to call our attention to the looking side. This is the core to which he wants us to go. The subject in us who performs the great business of always looking at things, at itself, others, facts and ideas. You go to your own core, which is your very beingness, and this is what Husserl wants to make a science of. It's really quite wonderful. Then he goes on, take your empirical experience, your very objective experience. Say you are enjoying a sunrise or a cup of tea. The sunrise and the cup are facts. Or you have a pain in your finger. That's a fact. Do you understand each of these individual experiences as a novelty when you experience it? Or do you bring to your mind any recalled memories or things that are already known to you? Certainly you bring to mind a number of things you already know to understand every experience. Husserl says, in that case, you are making an eidetic judgment. The presumption of objectivity is only incidental. You project an eidetic judgment on the incident. Eidetic judgment means the memory you have as the seer of a previous similar occasion which colors your vision of the present. Husserl does not deny the world of facts. He says basically what Narayana Guru says, that the fact aspect is like a pencil sketch. The rest you fill in. Suppose you look through your window at night and see a man standing there with a gun. You are horrified. You don't know whether you should call the police or silently go back to bed and wait there for his next move. You close your eyes. When you look again, he is still there. After waiting in agony for something to happen, you fall back asleep. The next morning when you wake up, you see what you thought was a man was really your overcoat, which you had hung in front of the window. Your fear of someone coming in the night supplied all the details. You clearly saw the man with the gun. Do you not do this in your everyday life? Husserl gives another example, which I thought was very good. You look at the sky and see 3 stars. The stars are probably hundreds of light years apart, but you see them as a triangle. You call another group of stars a bear and another one a hunter. Are there really any constellations in the stars? No. We make them all up and give them names. Similarly, if you put 3 dots on a piece of paper, they look like a triangle. Actually, there are only the 3 points, but your mind immediately constructs a triangle. Husserl asks, what the difference is between the triangle you see on the paper and the one you see in the sky. In essence, there is no difference, because that essence is the beingness of the triangle. He says this is not coming from the seeing side, but from the looking side. Next, Husserl discusses what he calls regional ontology. He says that there are two inseparable correlates. First, for you to see a triangle, a figure should necessarily have 3 angles and 3 sides. Second, wherever this kind of formation comes, it is inevitable that you comprehend it as belonging to that particular class. Thus our lives are governed by the properties of modulations and the possibilities for their modulation. How this is, we do not know. It is a wonder. This same idea will be further elaborated in some of the upcoming verses. In Sanskrit, the looking side is called Pramatra Chaitanya, and the seeing side is Prameya Chaitanya. The criterion by which you relate the looking to the seeing is called Pramana Chaitanya. In these 3 is a common factor, Chaitanya, or consciousness. The objective and subjective aspects of consciousness, taken together with the criterion of consciousness, give you what you think of as a valid experience. Facts are incidental in life, but operational meanings give facts validity for your empirical life. This is why the Guru says these forms are not anritam. They are not functionally unreal. They are unreal only in the sense that in themselves they have no beingness. Their beingness is only of consciousness, Chaitanya. This whole mechanism called the functional aspect of consciousness is not something which should bring us to any depression, but to a state of elation. Accepting this takes a big load from our hearts. We no longer need to insist on having to understand everything. This whole creation, manifestation, projection is such that it is bound to be uncertain. That is the only certitude, the certitude of uncertainty. When we accept it, we think, I am not called upon to know everything. Fine, now I can be a very simple person. There is no need for me to be as intelligent as God. It is God's creation, or call it nature if you prefer. This is a world of wonder. The classes and categories that are relevant to our daily experience have an operational validity. This makes things very easy for us. When I assume I am a teacher and you are my students, it is functionally sound. I don't have to get confused about it. The uncertainty may be a wholesale uncertainty, but this part is certain. I am a teacher and you are my students. Or this man is a doctor and his patients are receiving treatment from him. The pen is a pen and the computer is a computer, because they all have their place and thus are not anritam but ritam. But I don't go to the other extreme and say each by itself is absolutely real. I have to be cautious, not taking everything for granted. It can be misleading. I am wakeful and vigilant because this is the field where I may encounter many snares. The aspect which we say is a wonder is called paramartham, ultimate meaning. Where there is a functional reality, it is called the transactional, vyavahara, and where it is illusory, it is called pratibhasa. So there are these 3 aspects, the illusory, the transactional, and the transcendental. The transcendental is full of wonder, and it is uncertain. Why is it uncertain? Because the subject-object duality is effaced there. Husserl calls this the transcendental reduction. It is the ultimate reduction by which you come to pure beingness, absolute and unquestionable. You are not there to question because you have merged into it. You have lost your face and your mind. This is not bad, because in its place you have gained the whole. In addition, you have the very workable field of transaction and the murky realm of illusions. It's all very beautifully laid out. And the free translation of verse number 87 is as follows. When each entity is taken by itself, it has existence, and it excludes other things by the law of impenetrability. When this fact is considered, the body and such cannot be rated as real or unreal. They can only be termed indescribable.